Thank you for being here. I am Claire Smith-Victor, and I'm representing the Career Center along with my colleague, Sasha Thornhill, who will be managing the online chat this evening. I want to welcome the alumni to back to the campus and to the Black Career Pathways in STEM event, and also to students and staff. Tonight, we aim to connect Black students and Black graduate professionals working in the areas of STEM. Their fields include medicine, public health, research, social services, and many other fields. You will have an opportunity to network with them later on. We've got 2 breaks for networking sessions. So expect to be enlightened and inspired during this event. Before we begin the program, I'd like to offer the land of acknowledgement, as we normally do. I wish to acknowledge the land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. I also want to acknowledge and recognize that this land has welcomed many Africans in the diaspora, and we appreciate the opportunities afforded us as we dwell on Turtle Island. Our sponsors for this evening are Manulife and TV Insurance, and we are grateful to have them sponsor this event. I will now ask Philip to give a few remarks.
Hi folks, so my name is Philip. I'm the VP Equity of the UTMSU, and one of the things that we do at UTMSU is champion and fight for equity initiatives on this campus. For example, the event you're here at now is called the Black Career in STEM. It's to engage Black folks to know about what career they want to do in the future. So as you're here in this event today, don't just listen to panelists, engage and also come up and speak with panelists as well. That's one thing we want to champion as well. So I'm very thrilled to have you all here so that by the end of this event, you'll grasp something and be able to take back home with you a few pieces of advice from these panelists and be able to just use this when you're going for your future endeavors. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Somto.
Hi everyone, my name is Somto, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the team lead for community mentorship programs at the Center for Student Engagement, that's the CSE. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about the Black Alumni Mentorship Program kicking off in January. If you're a third year or fourth year Black identifying student, you're thinking about what's next after UTM, career-wise, what prospects you're considering. The Black Alumni Mentorship Program connects you to Black identifying established alumni who can give you insight on their experiences and just a lot that you can gain out from that experience. I myself was a mentee in the program last year, and I was paired with an amazing mentor who provided amazing guidance to me. And I think it's very important for you to have that mentor-mentee relationship from an alumni aspect, not just an alumni, but an alumni who connects with you on your background, experiences, something that you can find in many places. So if you have any questions about the Black Alumni Mentorship Program, we have the Alumni Mentorship assistants at the back in yellow shirts, and they will address any questions you have and direct you to the Black Alumni Mentorship website where you can sign up. But yeah, I think if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me or them at the back. Thank you.
I would like to introduce Balikis Hashiru of the University of Toronto Black Alumni Association. She is an experienced urban forestry professional and community engagement advocate. She currently serves as co-president of University of Toronto's Black Alumni Association. She actively supports and initiates she actively supports initiatives like the Abaris Ground Worker Training Program, where she volunteers as a guest speaker, imparting her knowledge and inspiring future Abarists. The University of Toronto Black Alumni Association aims to create a strong network whereby Black alumni and current undergraduates and graduate students achieve greater success through stronger connections with one another. The association also aims to connect its members more closely to the wider University of Toronto community. You may engage with Valikis later during the networking break to learn more about the association, and her table is at the back. Before I introduce our panel, a little bit of housekeeping. In the event that you'd like for our guests, who is not familiar with the campus, the bathrooms are to the back by the pool table. In the audience this evening are students from a cross-section of majors and years of study. We also have alumni who are not on the panel and staff. I welcome you all. Tonight we have two panels. The first panel is made up of more recent alumni, which you will hear from shortly. After they have presented and answered your questions, there will be a break for you to have refreshments and informally network. And I advise you to make use of that opportunity. When you return somewhere around 6:55, maybe 7 o'clock, because I think you're running a bit late, you will have the opportunity to listen and to ask questions of the second panel of graduate professionals. And they have been in the workforce for many years. At the end of the second panel, again, you will have opportunities to informally network. So I'm pleased to introduce the first panel of recent alumni. Habon Ali is Manager of Strategic Initiatives at the King's Trust Canada. Okay. Kareem Abdur Rashid, welcome. Kareem is co-founder and director of CARE Chemical Technologies and Research and synthetic chemist at Kamal Pharma. Okay, Kamal Pharma. Thank you. Jawahir Mohammed. Jawahir is a PhD candidate and personality psychology research assistant with the Chung Lab at UTM. Toby Mohammed. Toby is a clinical research assistant at Hamilton Research Sciences. And we have Everton Smith, who is a medical student with Temerty Faculty of Medicine at U of T. So I'm going to get into the questions. We had 10 questions to the panelists and asked them to sort of rank how they will respond. So I think my first question is going to Kareem. What advice would you give to students who may feel locked in to a particular career path in STEM? How can they start exploring other options without feeling like they're giving up on their original plans?
Hi, everyone. For that question, I would say definitely try to stay within the career path you're looking at and what your dreams, aspirations are, whatever goal you have. But there's a lot of ways that you can maneuver once you have a degree and once you have credentials. For example, I myself am doing chemistry. I have my own business with that. But recently I met someone who is a VC, so he works at venture capital. Essentially, he's an investor. He works at a fund that invests other people's money and invests in companies, some of which like my own. That person has a PhD in chemistry, and he's not doing any active chemistry, but his PhD in chemistry allows him to vet companies that create technologies with chemistry so that the fund and the accountants and those with finance background can then invest in those companies. So he's part of that vetting process and works with companies like that. So that's just one example of different careers that you can do with a STEM background, depending on your specialties and such. So I would say go for whatever you're going for within STEM, but there's a lot of different ways that you can venture out of STEM or utilize that degree in different ways once you're done.
Thank you. Would you say then that students need to look at the skills they're building, which would help them to sort of diversify?
Definitely. I would say, along with the hard skills of whatever you're developing for science and research, definitely look towards the soft skills, speaking, cooperation, teamwork, team building, and more than anything, I would say networking, getting to know people in your circle and outside of it, so that you can branch out and connect with more individuals.
Thank you very much. The next question is to Everton. Can you share the steps you took to ensure your grad school application was competitive? What would you say independent research is seen? Would you say independent research is seen as valuable from a research, a form of research to graduate schools? So would you say that independent research is seen as a valuable form of research to graduate schools? And let me clarify that. We have ROP, which is Research Opportunity Program, and then we have independent research. And so would you say that form of independent research is valuable?
Yeah, I think it can be pretty challenging when trying to plan your application for graduate school, medical school, because there's a lot of different information about what's necessary to get into these programs and be successful in your application. I would say for one, it's really important to do things you actually care about. And I say that because it'll show in how you speak about them, if you have an interview, how you're able to talk about them. And it'll also increase the likelihood that you engage in these activities for a long time. And I feel like having those long-term activities is really valuable to show in your application as well. In terms of research, I know it can really be challenging to figure out what it is, why to do it, how to do it, and so on. But I think the programs that are at UTM, such as the ROP program, the independent research programs, and another important one that really helped me was the work study program. And I think really tapping into those is valuable. I'll share a brief story with that is, the first research experience I had before I really even knew what I was getting myself into was through the work study program. I applied to it on the CLN website, and I ended up working in a program called the Multi-Organ Transplant Student Research Training Program, which is a mouthful, but essentially just working with other university students on research related to transplantation. And that really got my foot in the door and allowed me to understand more what research looked like in the real world, and also helped me identify that, say, doing something like clinical research was of more interest to me versus some of the more wet lab related things that you may see at UTM. So really exploring it and seeing what's out there is important. And then once you get your foot in the door, I think it's much easier to find different opportunities and also for yourself identify what interests you and where you want to go with it.
Thank you. January 15th was a career fair in the Rock. And I think that if you're interested in getting into work-study programs, you may want to attend that. Or you can find information about it on the Career Center website when you return in January. And if it's not there, knock on my door and I'll help you to find it. The next question I will ask Toby. With the economic climate being so challenging, can you share tips and tricks to financing and fulfilling the vision to attend grad school? Were there any challenges for you?
Yeah, so for me with my application, I think it's first important to do research and my background researching like what school you want to go to and looking at tuition costs first. I think a promise I made to myself was like, okay, for my graduate school, for my master's, I want to fund it myself. Like I don't have to rely on my parents, but like I want to fund it myself through scholarships. This is something I didn't lean more towards during my undergrad, so this is a personal goal I have for myself. And so what I did was I looked at different schools, I looked at the costs and the program I wanted to do. The program I wanted to do was global health, and there's only 2 programs that have like a grad program for global health, Western and McMaster. And at Western, it was like I think 2,000, like it was really high tuition for 1 year. And then I looked at McMaster, and like by the time you added up, I think it was less than 10K. So I was like, okay, and they had some scholarship options as well. I applied to both, but I also like kind of looked at what the prices were before going into it. So I think don't go in blind and kind of do your research and then narrow it down based on that. Another thing I had to myself was application fees cost money too. So I made sure like I was narrowing it down to the schools that I really wanted. Like for my program is already limited, but if you're looking at a program where like a lot of schools have that same program, you want to kind of narrow it down to like, okay, what kind of courses, or professors, or talk to past students. Like for my program, Habon had actually done that program, so she was the only one at UTM that I knew that had done it. So I talked to her, and then I looked more into it, and that's how I knew this what I want to do. And a lot of schools also offer entrance scholarships. So with McMaster, there was also an entrance scholarship that I didn't even know about. So by the time I received my admission, they had deducted like 1 semester of tuition, so I only had 2 semesters left. And then I also applied for other scholarships I saw on the website. Like I know at UT we have places where you can look at all the different scholarships. Other schools also have that. So it's just important to try and do it, even though it seems like, oh, I might not get it, but there's a lot of money that goes unclaimed every single year. And I know it's cliche to say, but that's actually what happens. So I think that's the main thing. And also, don't be afraid to ask that professor or that work supervisor for a reference for that scholarship. They will write you as many like as they need. It's the same one for multiple scholarships, so it's not too difficult.
Thank you. I mean, from your response, I take investigate, research, aspect. Jawahir, what resources or networks would you recommend helping students learn about non-traditional or emerging STEM careers?
I think I would generally recommend reaching out to professors that you know. I think a lot of professors stress that if you're interested in learning more about the course content, like outside of the syllabus, or learning more about their research, for example, to attend their office hours. I think you can also get that one-on-one kind of interaction that you wouldn't typically get in like a lecture hall. I would also reach out to different resources that UTM offers, like for example, like the Career Center. I believe they offer like a series of events on different like career paths. So attending those would be great because you can get more knowledge on the career path that you're interested in, but also networking with like other people who are also in it, like people who are from UTM, so like a student like yourself, or like professionals. And if I would also reach out to like any colleagues that you have. So for example, if you work in like a lab, it's really good to ask your, for example, like your lab mates for any like advice, because they might know, they might have like direct knowledge of it, or they might be able to connect you with someone else who does. So I guess just like doing your research and like accessing different resources that UTM offers, or people that you know, like professors or other students, I would recommend to get more knowledge in like or like emerging like fields and STEM.
Thank you. Normally I tell students to attend office hours because it's important to get to know the professors, but more importantly for the professors to get to know them, in particular if you're going to ask for references to grad school. We also in the Career Center offer networking opportunities, and so you may want to look at CLN on the events and the workshops and attend when you can. And there is a website called 10,000 Copies, and that's where you connect with, it's sort of a career website for graduates to connect with students and provide some valuable information. And of course, there's the ever popular LinkedIn that you could use. Okay, thank you. Everton. How can students develop transferable skills that are relevant across different roles, even if they're not directly related to their major?
Yeah, so I think when you're engaging in activities that may not feel like or seem like at face value they're directly related to something in STEM, it's really important to tap into other skills you can gain from it that are still related to maybe potential careers you're looking towards in the future. So, for example, say you're working a part-time job like at the mall, you're working at a fast food place, or you're volunteering somewhere. It may not seem right away like the things you're doing in that job are related to you wanting to be a doctor one day, but there's really more similarity in that than you might seem. And a lot of what comes in like beyond school and the workforce is those soft skills that you develop. Your ability to have a conversation with someone, work in a team environment, work on these like different teamwork and communication skills is really valuable. So being able to hone in on those in some of the other spaces that are not necessarily related to STEM, I think is so valuable. And I think it's also really important to leverage those experiences when you're applying to these graduate programs or professional programs, because those are experiences that may set you apart from other applicants, and you're really able to show how the things that you've done, even though you may not see working at the mall, like I said, as something that's directly related to the future you want, you can definitely try to leverage those experiences to relate it to your future.
Thank you. I think we talked about soft skills before. If you're having difficulty, the career counselors in the Career Center can help you to figure out how to include them include your skills and to demonstrate your skills in your application to grad school. I have one last question, and I'm just going to put it out there and anybody can answer. How did you navigate balancing financial aid applications, essay-based scholarships with schoolwork, personal life? How did you address scholarship fatigue?
I can try. I think for me, it wasn't even more so applying to scholarships just in my master's. I think right now, like I'm in the process of, fingers crossed, applying to my PhD, and it is not the same as applying to undergrad or a master's, is what I quickly realized. It is like, especially with the 9 to 5 as well, like trying to find this perfect supervisor that has funding for you. It's very tedious, like there's a lot of meetings, okay, I'm meeting this person, and does their research interests align with mine? And it can get really tiring, and I think that's where like community comes in, like my family and friends kind of still encouraging me, and also kind of relying on people who have helped me in the past as well. So like I remember even meeting with one of my like past UTM profs just for lunch, and she was just giving me some advice, right? Because she's way down in the line than I am. So I think leaning on your community is really important, and also just staying very organized. I'm the kind of person that I love to do lists. I love checking things off. I will write the smallest thing just so I can check it off. So even if it's like, okay, I want to send that email to this professor and can we have a meeting? Even if they don't respond, it's okay. There were a lot of people who didn't respond. There were a lot of people who responded after 2 months. After I sent 3 emails, they finally said, oh yeah, sure, it's me. Sorry, I didn't see this. I was on vacation. So I think that perseverance and just that, and that's the thing, if you really want it, you'll keep trying for it. So you have to know, this is something I really want to do. This is a research area I really want to like research, and this is something I want to achieve. So I'm just going to keep trying, and take breaks and reward yourself in between. But you just have to keep trying. A door usually opens at the end of the day.
Okay.
I think this would go for applications for graduate schools as well as any other programs that you're looking for, as well as job opportunities and so on. As best you can, always keep an up-to-date resume. If you can make personal statements, and if you've already made personal statements, definitely keep them in a folder, because chances are you're going to write similar things again, and some of the stuff might be outdated, some of it may no longer be relevant or relevant to that application. But if you've already written it once, it's way easier to take that and reformat it for the next application and the next one and the next one. And no matter where you go in your career, there's probably a ton of things you'll always be applying for, so those will always be relevant. So don't waste the time of rewriting it if you've done it already. And then having that personal statement, having that resume up to date, keeps everything together, and then you can just modify it and definitely modify it every time for every application, because you can highlight different things and make different things like the top point or the bottom point depending on where you're going and what you're applying to. And definitely write it yourself, but there's lots of ways that like you can use AI to like suggest things to you, but don't let it do the work for you because you're writing it and a person's gonna read it. So make sure that like it comes across well for people, and then get other people to read it over, friends, family, any mentors that you have, so that they can give their like expert opinion, especially mentors that are ahead or in the career that you're applying for or whatever that's being applied for, because they can give you the, we are looking for this, so don't even bother talking about X, Y, and Z, no one cares about it, because that can be super helpful in highlighting what points are most important.
Okay, thank you. Just before we open the mic to the audience, the Career Center offers opportunities for you to get your work critiqued. And so if you would like, before you take it to the professional, that you make an appointment and for a critique on your paper. So I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague, who will then take it to the audience for questions.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for the insights and all that knowledge you provided us. Everton, I just had a question. What were some of your ECs and what were some of the highlights of your undergrad that you felt really shone on your application to medical school?
Yeah, great question. And I think when I was applying to medical school, I would often, see individuals who are in school right now and feel like there's a great divide between like getting in and not getting in. And the reality of it is, there's no one right way to get into medical school or these different professional programs. Ultimately, it comes down to, like I was saying before, finding things you're passionate about. In terms of things that I did, I think on like the more academic side, I was part of that research program I mentioned previously, and I did that throughout third year and fourth year. I did it through the work study program, and I also did the Bio 400 course, the internship course in fourth year, and I thought that was a great experience as well. In terms of some other things I did outside of that, I volunteered at a hospital, sort of cookie cutter, but I think it's good in the sense of like getting exposure to like a clinical environment. I worked at my local recreation center since like high school as a sports instructor, as an ice skating instructor, and playing hockey is something I've been doing for most of my life. So I tried to like but like highlight the story through that. And I think when you're writing these applications, it's really important to tell a story in some way. So for example, I playing hockey for most of my life, and then I went on to teaching it to younger children. And I feel like showing that you're able to convey your passions to other individuals and really have that longevity through it is valuable. But yeah, beyond that, honestly, it just comes down to finding things that you're interested in. You feel like you could leverage in a way that allow you to show you're fit to be a physician. One thing I'll mention briefly is something called the CAN-MEDS rules, and these are essentially like a set of characteristics put out by, I can't remember the name of the organization, but it's really important when you're applying to medical schools. It's important to identify that you fit into those, or how you demonstrate those characteristics. So being like an advocate, a scholar, just example of two of them. So that's definitely something to look into if you're interested in medical school, to learn more about.
So we have questions. My question's for anybody, basically. So say you're in a major and like, I don't know, you like it, but you don't have like any direct passions in it. So like I'm a chemistry major and I'm like leaning towards analytical chemistry, but like I'm kind of just like, there's nothing really like pushing me to like really trying to see like career insights on it. For anybody, do you have any advice on like kind of trying to find your passion when you kind of feel directionless and just really trying to like pass classes most days?
So I also did chemistry, and funny enough, the least favorite for me was analytical, so I might not be able to give you specifics, but I definitely think knowing what type of job you want, at least in the form of what skills or what lifestyle that leads to, is an important way of narrowing down, or at least like cutting out what job entails that. For me, I actually thought of going to forensics at first because I knew I didn't want a desk job. Sitting at a table was not going to be a job that got me there. Doing research and then with forensics going into the field for one, but also the potential of going to court and stuff. Changing up the routine definitely spoke to me. So that was something that pulled me more to forensics and general research. Because with research, you're always changing what you're doing. So if that's something that you like or having that variability, that would be one thing you can look into. But generally for chemistry or any science, I think if you find the soft skills that you are good at naturally or the things that actually excite you, so like if you like working with kids, being a teacher might be something that really speaks to you. But even beyond that, analytical chemistry has certain skills. You have to be very accurate, you have to be very precise, and keep track of everything you're doing. So those skills all build into what you can do as a career. So for example, being in forensics, analytical forensics, you have to be very, very specific and very, very well documented. So look at the soft skills and the things that you actually like. So if you like chemistry, but like you don't know where you're gonna take that, look at the soft skills and then allow yourself to put it together naturally. And then also there's lots of programs and websites that you can put in soft skills you have and your general career, and it can outlet things. And then beyond that, you can just find other jobs that will connect you beyond, like after that.
This is for anyone, but how have you navigated being Black in your different fields? Whether it's like an undergrad, did you notice that you were like one of very few in your classes? In your field as well, like you might be still like the minority in your field, and how did you navigate, or how have you been navigating that?
I guess I can go. I remember in our undergrad, I don't know how many Black students were in our first year like chemistry, like math. Yeah, not that I mean they were there, but apart from them, there weren't too many. But I really thought it was going to be different in grad school. But I think as you go up, it gets less, unfortunately. That's why we need more of you. But I remember, especially my program is global health, which has to do like you think it's more diverse, but it wasn't. But there was still a good amount. And I think for me, one of the promises I made to myself, like compared to undergrad, where it was like you're in a class of 1,000 people, like, and then I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna raise my hand and answer a question in that class. Maybe tutorial, but not like in a lecture hall. And that changed in third and fourth year. But I remember coming into my master's and being like, okay, I want to like make sure I'm actually really applying this and I'm not just, you know, trying to get the best marks for my grades and that's it, which is how I felt like most of my academic life went at UTM. And so I was like, I'm ready to speak up and I want to like share my personal experiences. And the nice thing about my program, it was actually more on the interdisciplinary side. It was like more social sciences. So like it was very applicable to like my personal situation. It was applicable to like what's going on in the world today. And so it was very easy to kind of speak up, even though there weren't many people who looked like me in the room. You just have to own it and, you know, be yourself too. Don't like push yourself too much, but like also just.
I think just adding on to what Toby said, like I feel like during undergrad, like in terms of like the student body, it was pretty diverse. Like I feel like I met more Black people when I was an undergrad than I have so far in like grad school, which has been interesting to deal with. Because it's not just at the student level, it's also at the faculty level too. And so I think for me, how I navigate it is by talking to my Black friends a lot, especially when I have interesting experiences with non-Black people. So just being able to have a community outside of my program has been really helpful, but also within my lab as well. I've been able to rely on like my lab mates and also like my supervisor too, who kind of like helped me through interesting situations and have like validated my feelings. So I guess like Toby said, like owning it's really important, but also just like relying on the support networks that you have, whether it's like your friends or people who you work with.
I guess just to quickly add to that as well, I was also a student here, so I also similar experiences. And when I was a graduate student, I think there was a time there was another postdoc in chemistry, so there was two of us in chemistry, but then she went on to other studies. I graduated. There was another black student that came after me, in Jules, who was in chemistry. He's graduated as well. So I don't know if there are any other graduate students in chemistry now for UTM, but you guys are all here, and I'm assuming most of you are in STEM. So get to know each other, because you can be your own network within each other at UTM, which is a starting point. And then beyond UTM graduate studies and stuff, in my working experience, I have my own company, so I do work there. So I do represent a big chunk of my own company. So there are a lot of like that representation, but then networks exist. And so one network I joined this summer was the Black Founders Network, which is for people that have their own companies and are Black. They're part of U of T's entrepreneurship program. And so that was an experience where I got to find and meet and work with other Black founders in an organization dedicated to that. And there's other organizations like that in ecosystems that you can reach out to get that support and network. That's one of the ones that I joined that I had a really good experience with. But there's lots out there. You just, like similar to this and the U of T Black Alumni Association, there are organizations there. Just look for them and then build a network so that you can get that self-support.
I'll add really briefly onto that. I think sometimes what's challenging when you're one of few or the only Black person in some of the spaces you're in academically, you get this feeling of imposter syndrome, which I'm sure you've all heard of or maybe experienced yourselves. And it can be hard because you have doubt within yourself about whether you belong there, if you're supposed to be there. But I think it's really about having this sort of confidence in yourself. You ended up where you're at for a reason. Even being here in school right now is a huge accomplishment. So just being proud of that and sort of faking it till you make it. You may not always feel confident in these spaces, but you really have to just let yourself know, I'm here, I'm doing this, and I'm going to do it the best that I can. And that's all you can do. So.
And during the applications, right, for scholarships and like universities, some questions I found hard to answer. So when they ask, what can you add to the school? I always found it really, really hard to actually articulate what I can add because I don't want to seem too like pompous, but I also don't want to seem like I'm downplaying myself also. So I can't really find the balance. I was wondering like if you had advice for that. Thank you.
I guess I would ask you a follow-up question, like what ideas were you going to put, like more like your achievements or?
Yeah, achievements and skills mostly, and maybe also experiences, but most achievements and skills.
So I think we lean more on the third one you mentioned, which is experiences. That's what I did. So mine was like I bring my unique experiences. Specifically for my global health program, it's talking about like illnesses and diseases that are happening in third world countries. Like, so I lived in Nigeria during Ebola. Like, I lived in Canada, but I moved back to Nigeria during Ebola, and that was a certain like specific experience that's unique to me. So I'm bringing that and like bringing like even malaria. Like, I know maybe more about it than some people in the West might know, right? So I just mentioned those experiences and those, I guess, expertise. I don't know. That's what I bring, and just kind of rely more on your personal say when they ask you what do you bring, but then it also depends on your program. So I'm saying that because of my program, but yeah, you could also talk about your skills, I think. But I'm sure there are other questions that kind of talk more about skills and achievements. So you want to.
I guess just to add quickly, similar to what Everton said, confidence is really, really important and really valuable. You don't want to come across as pompous or like egotistical, and it's a fine balance, but you definitely want to own what you've done and what you've accomplished, especially if it's stuff that's ahead of your time. You want to make sure that you own that, because on an application, if you just kind of say it and don't really say it, they might think, oh, you were just involved, or maybe you're kind of just throwing that in there. So you definitely want to put it in there as a big fact when it is. And I think also, if you're worried about coming across as too much, there's ways of trying to state achievements specifically and experiences as factual, and that way it pulls away from, oh, I did this and I'm so great because I know how to do this and that, versus I did this and the output of that was this, and then you make it more factual. It takes away from the possibility of seeing egotistical, but you're still really driving home like the relevance of what you did and the impact it had for whatever you were doing.
I think something I'll add too is applications can be hard if you're someone that doesn't really like to talk about themselves, but this is your time to talk your talk and show like what you've done. You know, especially if, for example, applying to medical school, the things you write is what the first look they're seeing about you. And if there are 5,000 other people applying, you want to show why you yourself are the individual that they should be taking for that program. And something that you could potentially lean on if you're comfortable is the unique experiences you may have as a Black student, whether that's from your cultural background, your relationship with maybe members in your community, things you know about a given community. For example, in medicine, if you're familiar with, say, a certain condition that affects one ethnic group more than another, and how your knowledge of that would put you in a position to hopefully provide that culturally sensitive care to those patients. So just one example of how you could sort of lean in on you as a person, not even your experiences, things you've done, but your knowledge about your community, your background for these applications.
Okay, we have one more question, one quick question, and it's from online. And it says that assuming, like at UTM, if you didn't have any Black professors in STEM, what effect do you think it would have had on your experience? If you didn't, assuming you didn't have a Black professor, what experience or what effect do you think it had on your experience?
I think you said assuming you did not have. I don't think there. Oh, okay, you had.
No, we didn't.
Okay, yeah. I don't think there are. At least from my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong, but so I would say there weren't any. There are definitely professors that are really good and looking out for you. They may not have that in-person, like personal relation, but there are definitely professors looking out for you and able to like put that word in or make that extra effort for you because they know it's maybe a bit harder for you, and they won't say they're doing it, but definitely tap into the ones that are looking out for you and willing to talk to you, willing to say that extra second, because they are aware, and whether or not they do isn't necessarily good or bad, but the ones that are making that effort, lean into that and see what you can do. And if any prof does take interest in you, make sure that you make the most of that, because it's rare regardless, and if you're already a minority and stuff, there's less in the cards for you. So whenever you get that opportunity, make the most of it.
If I can add a little bit. I think it's also important, like you mentioned earlier, going to office hours is really important because then they can see you one-on-one, and they're going to be there anyway, so if you don't show up, they're still going to be there. So I think it's important to do that, but also to give feedback too. It might seem intimidating, but I remember my first year chemistry professor, who seemed really intimidating. In our third year, I think she had approached the board here. She was in recruitment and admissions at the time, but she's not here anymore. But I remember she approached her and like, what can we do about Black students in like chemistry and like a lot of these sciences? Because I see them in my first year classes, and then I don't see them like in fourth year choosing us as like their specialty or anything. Like they kind of go up to other programs. And I remember she connected the professor to my friends and I, and we're like on that Zoom like, oh my gosh, this is like our first year professor who gave us like PTSD, but she came back and like she was the one who reached out. We weren't the ones who reached out, right? She reached out and she was like very enthusiastic about like we need to do something, and then that's how the Black STEM like program for like high school students came about. Like I think 2 years ago. I don't know if it's still going on, but where they like pay your entire tuition for I think your first year. But like that only came out because of that one professor who then like was like, I want to meet with you guys. Why didn't you go into you know, like this specific specialty? And then we told her like, this is how we felt in your class, and like we talked, and it was open conversation, and there was a productive thing at the end of it. So it's also important to speak up and like try to contribute to change.
Okay, thank you so much. I learned a lot, and so I hope the students did. But I picked up a couple of words, networking and community. It's important to hold your community close, to ask questions, and to network. Now, if you're having a challenge and you're shy, the Career Center offers many workshops on how to network. And I hope that you take the opportunity to attend those. We are about to begin the second half of the evening, and I'm about to introduce the second panel. This panel is more, I wanted to say seasoned, but perhaps I wouldn't. This panel is graduates or alumni that have been out in the workplace for a longer time. And so they bring, I'm sure, lots and lots and lots of experiences and tips that can help you. So let's begin. We have got Hayes Shepmeyer, who is to my right, far right. Amal Gedle. Is Irene here? I'm not sure. I thought I saw Irene this evening. Maybe not. Sandrina. And Nigel Hargay. So Hayes is a life event transition mediator, and she's with Grow My Grit, and she's got a lot to share. Amal is a senior policy advisor with the Ministry of Health, OPS. Sandrina works for the Public Health Nurse Region of Peel, and Nigel is program analyst, environment conservation and parks with the Ministry of Environment. Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's start. Question. And I think I'll start with Hayes. How important are networking and informational interviews when exploring postgraduate education options? Do you have any tips on how students can approach professionals or alumni in their fields?
Absolutely. So again, just to reiterate a lot of what was said in the first panel, networking and informational opportunities are everywhere, and it's up to us to actually decide to access them. And one thing I can bring specifically is the idea that there are professional associations for pretty much every discipline, and most of us don't know about them. When I was an undergraduate student coming to university, I understood psychology to be kind of the study of people, but that's the extent of it. At the campus when I was here, there were about 8 different kinds of psychology, which allowed me to network. There was neuropsych, there was cognitive, there was abnormal, social psychology. But as a student, I learned about the Canadian Psychological Association. So again, as someone whose opportunities and windows and doors kept blowing open, as I met people, I found the professional associations were actually a really powerful place to network and to learn about things that were not available on campus. So again, this idea that there are networking opportunities everywhere, but it's finding the ones that make sense and are relevant. And so an example of the Canadian Psychological Association, there were 23 kinds of psychology in terms of divisions, which again was news to me, but they've established organizations. And they also have a student section. So what's really important to understand as well is that a lot of these associations recognize how hard it is to come in with no understanding of what's available, and also how important it is for students to connect with each other. So the Canadian Psychological Association, and there's one for every discipline that I would imagine, but there's a specific section for students where the leaders are senior students, where they invite incoming students. They really make a point of ensuring that students understand how the system works. So again, this sense of where do you look for professional tips? Where do you look for additional resources? Sometimes it's outside of the campus in a world of people doing what it is that you don't even know you want to do. As well, there are experiences that some of the senior students have had, different universities offer different opportunities. So again, in terms of pulling that together, networking is everywhere. It's a choice. And at the same time, these professional associations will add a layer of expertise and awareness that is also relevant when you leave. If it's a national organization, regardless of where you end up studying next, where you decide to work, you can stay a member for the rest of your life. There's a student membership, which is a discounted rate because students don't always have a lot of money. There's a professional level as well. So just recognize that there are organizations dedicated to the discipline that you've chosen and recognizing the tiers or the steps of your kind of ladder in that discipline.
Thank you. I do advise students to get involved with student membership because it's cheaper and you can network a lot. But do you advocate for students attending conferences?
Absolutely, that's the next layer of the professional associations. Most of them have one annual event a year. So again, the Canadian Psychological Association has an annual conference, but each one of those 23 divisions also has its own conference. And so from there, there's a lot more space to get posters accepted, to get research accepted. It's a little less competitive at the section level than it is at the national level. But either way, you can, as a student, attend these conferences, meet other students, meet faculty that you would never have crossed paths with, learn about literature, and even beyond the conferences, a lot of the sections will have sub kind of networking events sometimes just because there's a bunch of people in the Greater Toronto area, or there might be the kind of Southern Alberta group. But again, conferences are a great place to even understand where some of the literature, some of the work that you're really working hard to understand, where it ends up. And then in STEM in particular, there's always an industry-driven passion for more research, and a lot of what people are studying isn't being studied on campus. So definitely access the networking opportunities, the conferencing opportunities, and the awareness opportunities that professional associations have to offer.
Thank you. Nigel, what skills have been the most valuable to you in your career, especially those that may not be taught in a traditional STEM curriculum?
Yeah, I would say one of the most valuable skills is communication, really, and you know, building a strong network for yourself. But effective communication is super important, especially you know in STEM fields. You know, in STEM, we spend a lot of time developing those hard skills. You know, crunching numbers, being, you know, gaining knowledge and, you know, analyzing the data. But oftentimes it's how the story is told, right? How can you communicate your findings and your research to the audience that it's intended to? And how can you also work together with your colleagues and your supervisors or your fellow students, your profs? How can you develop those to make sure that you're an effective communicator? That is, I think, to me, that's one of the most valuable skills. Where I work now, I work for the Ontario Ministry of the Environment, and I do a lot of, you know, I do policy analysis on certain like drinking water issues, and a lot of times it's very like, you know, I have to kind of get into the weeds about these policies and legislation, but then come up with my findings, and then not only tailor them to the audiences of my colleagues, but you know, audiences, you know, the public, of different stakeholders. So to me, you know, communication is super important. Yeah, I think that's a number one skill for me.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there is a chapter on UTM campus, but Toastmasters, if you want to improve your communication skills, Toastmasters is a really good organization to join. Maybe there's a junior Toastmasters, I don't know, but perhaps you may want to look into that and to see whether there is one at UTM. My next question is for Amal. How should students go about breaking into smaller or lesser known fields of STEM?
Great question, thank you. So the first thing that I really emphasize to myself, and I think as a point for others, is really just to be interested. And the reason why I think that's super important is when you find yourself really interested in something, you will go to great lengths to learn more about it, to go to places to seek out opportunities, to make those connections. And so you don't necessarily start to view it as a process where you have to do a checklist of I have to attend a networking event, I have to, you know, work on this particular research project. It's really just something that you care about, you're passionate about, and those naturally lead to other relationships, networks naturally growing without you having to necessarily view it as a chore. The other part I thought might be helpful, and I didn't necessarily think about when I was going through school, was to let other people know what your interests are. And so oftentimes when we think of networking, we are often focusing on people who are currently in those roles or in the career path that you have. So you're kind of looking at a mentor, someone ahead of you, but you often miss out on your peers, people around you that will or may eventually connect you to other people. And once they know that you're interested in something, they will, like, when they meet someone, maybe they're not interested, but they can say, oh, I remember so-and-so and they're interested in this area. Let me connect them with someone. And the reason why that was something super important for me was my first role actually in policy was, like, I got it through that way. I had a classmate who knew that I was really interested in income security policy, and they were at an event, and a manager from income security policy at the Ministry of Finance was doing a talk. And in that talk, they had mentioned, we have job openings. I wasn't there, and so they immediately contacted me and said, hey, this opening happened, here's the email, and I applied, connected with the manager, and that led to my first role, and I would never have come across it if it weren't for that relationship. And so it wasn't necessarily a mentor or someone who was in the position, because I didn't know anyone at the time who was in that space, but it was actually just a friend of mine who was in class with me. And so that being an area that I think we often forget about. And obviously I'm not telling you to view your friends as like networks for jobs, but it's sort of a natural thing when you start making relationships with people that you share interests and you support each other and grow. So that's something that I would say it was really important for me, and I hope it's something that folks can relate to as well.
Thank you. One of the things when students come to me and wanting to figure out how to find their way in the workforce, I always ask them, what does your parents do? Do you have an uncle that is working in a particular area? Do you know what your friends' parents do? Because sometimes it is the parents of a friend may know somebody. And a student told me once that she got the job because her friend's father was working in a particular ministry in the government, and she kind of mentioned it to him, and then he sort of facilitated her friend getting the position. I mean, interviewing and so on and so forth. But she was qualified and she got a position. But it was because her classmate told her dad, who was in that particular ministry, and was able to facilitate that. So look at your networks and use them as well as you can. The next question I am going to ask Sandrina. How did you navigate rejection from STEM positions, example, jobs, research positions, and how did you utilize that to continue pushing forward?
Thank you for that question. So in my preparation for this, I don't know that I gave this as much thought as I gave the other questions. I'm going to be very honest. So you're about to get stream of consciousness from me right now. I think in the past, I viewed rejection as like a personal failing. But now at the stage of life that I'm in, I feel like rejection, and I know you've heard this so many times, I view rejection as just redirection. I'm just looking for the next opportunity that can come with the resources that I have. And I feel like sometimes I also view it as like, maybe now is not the time. Maybe I need to go back and develop some more skills, get some more experience, make some more connections to find myself here. I think a lot about the fact that right now I'm in the process of applying for grad school. And this is 9 years after I did my undergrad. And on some level, I feel like maybe I waited too long. But I think I really needed to go through the experiences that I needed to go through so that I could actually embrace the experience of applying to a grad school, feeling the feeling of excitement, but also nervousness, but also knowing that I have all these years of experience within me and behind me that lead me to this point. And I think what I would say is everybody's journey is so unique. And I think the one thing I would say, like, that I think about is, you know, there is time. You know, you're not running out of time. There's time to get to where you need to go.
Thank you. You know, I read something once that said, every setback is a setup for a comeback. And so when I listen to you, I'm thinking, okay, she's coming back. And so while rejection could be difficult on all levels, but yes, you see it as something positive to learn, to look at the areas in which maybe you need to do some work, and then you come back, and when you come back, you're more successful and you're stronger. Nigel, are there any specific skills you feel that students should consider developing if they want to keep their options open for alternative career paths?
So that's a pretty good question, and by keeping your options open, one of the best things that I would suggest people do is just keep an interest in learning. You know, that's why we're here at UTM, and that's why we're interested in furthering our education, whether that's going on to grad school, doing a master's, PhD. Never stop learning, because if you have a hunger for knowledge and learning different, there's always something more to learn, and if that is something that really drives you, then I think it'll serve you well, trying to break into alternate career paths. Oftentimes it can be very intimidating trying to do that, because you might see someone in a career path that you want to go into, and then you see, oh, they're very far along, or they're very talented at XYZ thing. But just believe that you can also do that too. And one thing I would suggest is cataloging your wins, cataloging the things that you've been successful at up until now, and what kind of skills you demonstrated in doing that. And you can put that on your resume when you want to apply to different jobs. And also, it goes back to what the other panelists were saying, is networking is super important. Finding those people out there, taking a genuine interest in what it is they do, what it is you want to explore, and learning from them and getting information and making your own contributions as well. So I think those are really, really important skills. Through my career, I've been involved in, I currently work in government, but I've worked in the nonprofit sector as well, where I would go fundraising, go door-to-door fundraising, and that takes a different set of skills from. It takes, some of the skills are similar, some of the skills are different. And I've worked in the private sector, and I returned to UTM, well, after 5 years, 5 years after completing my undergrad. So yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of things to kind of learn, and you got to keep up that level of learning.
Thanks, Nigel. I should tell you, the Career Center has a website on skills articulation. Actually, it's a module on skills articulation, and it really helps students to identify those skills that they have, that they didn't know that they have, actually, and then to figure out, well, are there some skills that you'd like to acquire? So check it out, skills articulation. I am going to go to Hayes. What are the most important factors you think the student should consider when researching and choosing a graduate program or university? Are there things you wish you had known earlier in your own research?
For me, one of the most important questions to ask is, what did I love doing? What am I doing now? And what does my future self want to be doing? So applying for schools, applying for graduate studies, anything that is involving the future is always a little bit intimidating, and there may be a disconnect, but the person you are now was the future self to an earlier version of you. So this whole idea that when you're applying, when you're deciding what does this STEM mean to me now, is it what are the things that no one's ever heard about, that I've never even considered, but where do I want to be? Because some of the choices you're making now, we heard in the earlier panel, what kind of work do you like to do? What kind of conversations do you like to have? So this kind of bigger picture is, what does future Hayes need me to do right now so that she can enjoy opportunities the way that present Hayes is doing a lot by what past Hayes feels about. So even recognizing that you're all in the room, there's another version of yourself that didn't even think that you'd be asking the questions, studying the studying, doing what you're doing now. So again, it's a bit of a broader scope, but this whole idea of considering where you want to be based on where you are and what you've done is an important opportunity, and that's something that not everybody thinks about. I didn't start thinking about that till kind of the middle of my undergrad, but again, this whole what I wish I had known, someone had reminded me, is that there's a lot that I've already got. I have a lot of capabilities, I have a lot of capacity, and if I can recognize how another version of me got me to where I am, that's in turn going to inspire me to think of where this current version of me, with a certain conversation, with a series of applications, with a series of networking, is going to help get future Hayes.
Thank you. I'm just going to throw this question out there. Do you think that, how important is job shadowing for sort of helping careers along and career choice along?
I'm going to jump in because, so I'm an alumni. I graduated in 2000. I graduated before most of you were born. I just love putting that out there. And I think that it's really critical that there's a lot we learn from books, but a lot that we learn from being in the same space as someone doing what A, we thought the job was, and B, what the job actually is. So I cannot say enough about that opportunity. I was involved in the Career Center. Again, you are students, you are paying tuition, and you are paying people whose full-time job is to help you get jobs. There are programs, when I was here, it was called Extern. The Extern program was a chance where I could literally apply. Again, I'm in psychology, but science is that bigger picture. I had never heard of industrial organizational psychology when I was an undergrad because nobody was studying it here, but the Career Center had this enormous board that said, tell us what you want, we'll find someone doing that work, and we're going to connect you. So I feel like job shadowing is a chance to meet someone to confirm that the thing you thought was involved in this job actually is involved in this job, and B, to start understanding what's happening outside of your campus, and C, again, there is a Career Center, people's full-time job is to support you, and you're paying tuition, so it just made sense to me to tap into that.
Anybody else? Okay. Thanks for that. I was going to mention the difference between career certainty and career clarity. And job shadow really does help with clarifying certain things. Of course, we do have a job shadow program, but we also have something called In the Field, where I think it's once a month, students gather and they're taken to a particular organization. You have to sign up for it. Last month they went to CAMH, and you spend half a day meeting professionals, talking about programs, looking at volunteer opportunities, co-op opportunities. So there's job shadow and there's In the Field, and look out for it next semester, January usually, around the middle of January. We usually advertise for those programs, or we will be advertising for those programs. I'm just going to put a question out there. Who would like to answer? Can you provide 3 important career considerations you would like the students to think about within the first 3 to 5 years after completing their bachelor's degree? So as 3 important career considerations you would like students to think about within the first 3 to 5 years after completing their degree. Anybody can answer.
I'll take a shot. Again, this is a stream of consciousness as I'm speaking as well. So I think the first point, which I was reiterated throughout the panel, is really honing in on what your interests are. What is it that excites you? What is it that you're passionate about? And that by really understanding that, so who you are at this moment and what this person is interested in, will help guide you in terms of the experiences you'll seek out, the relationships you want to create, the spaces you want to access. I think we often minimize the importance of that. I think, and I'm going to speak for myself, but I often heard, passions don't get the bills paid, right? And so you're often feeling like you have to just separate yourself from this version of what you're interested in versus what it is that's going to take you to maybe lead up to the lifestyle that you kind of are aspiring to in the future. And I really do think, from my experience at least, and I think a lot of folks may agree, when you really lean into what it is that you're interested in, it will lead eventually to a path that you will feel confident in who you are and eventually to where it is that you're meant to be. And I think when we think about passions, we sometimes limit ourselves in like the language we use. It may be a field. Like, I'm really passionate about, I don't know, science. That's very vague. That's not very specific. And I think can also like box you in how you understand what is science. Is there a field? Is it an approach? Is it the research method? Is it analytical aspect to it? Is it the fact that and when you think about it that way, taking a methodological approach to understanding issues isn't limited to the lab, right? It's something that it's an approach, and so you can apply that to so many different fields. And so I think when we really take the time to explore ourselves and what it is that we are really interested in, what keeps us motivated, that is, I think, one thing that I felt was really helpful for me reflecting on post-grad. And then the other part is sometimes you gotta do what you don't like. And I think really just accepting that life isn't going to be all roses. I mean, roses have thorns, so I guess it kind of could be. And so really accepting the fact that the thing that you want to do may require you to temporarily give up things that you don't want to just give up, right? And so maybe you need to put more time. Maybe you have to reach out to people that maybe make you really nervous. You don't like speaking. Maybe you don't think you're capable of doing a particular skill that makes you, for whatever reason, and everyone has their own experiences, their own relationships. Sometimes it's things you've been told, it's things that you've seen. So really acknowledging that and accepting that it's okay if I'm not happy with where I am right now. Maybe I'm not happy with the specific things that are ahead of me, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that will keep me going. And then the third part to that would be also recognizing sometimes we push ourselves a little too much, and so we want to balance being able to say, I need to push myself to a certain extent, but maybe I reach a point where maybe I do need support, maybe I need to tone it back, maybe it's a way of framing. I'm viewing this issue or what I see ahead of me differently than what it actually is, right? And so an obstacle may look like an obstacle from this perspective. I keep trying to hit a wall. I miss that there's a door right behind, like on the side, right? So I think those are maybe 3 things, but I'll let folks add on if they have anything they want to add.
One word for me that jumps out is the idea of being accountable to yourself and being accountable to those around you. Speaking to what Amal just referenced, as you make the career choices you're making, it's really deciding that I am choosing this path. I will be accountable to the way it leads. I will be accountable to the results I find or don't find. And in those instances where you might be banging your head against the wall, per se, it's, am I being overly accountable to my parents because they wanted me in this area? Am I being overly accountable to a demographic? So I just feel that Amal's answer pulled the word accountability out of me in terms of a career skill, because it's really independent of the discipline. It's where are you choosing to put your effort and how is that being returned? And in the presence of community, that also came up a lot. There are lots of ways to be accountable, but it's self-accountability that really gets sometimes lost in those conversations. So again, just building on what Amal said, I feel like accountability is a really critical skill for the first year, 2 years, 3 years, essentially the rest of time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that, picking up off the accountability piece and visualizing where it is that you want to be in 3 to 5 years, know that there are generally like multiple paths to get to where you want to go. and there's no one right answer to, okay, say you want to be like a manager at a company, or you want to have a PhD in your chosen field, or you want to open a company. So many different people have had so many different paths, and your path might not be linear. Your path will have successes, and your path will have setbacks. My path has had setbacks. I was like, I spent time after I graduated my undergrad, and I was like grinding away working warehouse jobs until I got my first job at the Ministry of the Environment. I had a couple student positions through there, but and then I got laid off 2 years later, and so I was back to kind of grinding again in jobs that weren't even in my field and didn't pay well at all. And then I started working for an environmental organization in downtown Toronto, and that, even though maybe that didn't have the best pay, maybe didn't have the best pay, the skills and leadership that I got from working for the nonprofit was really, really valuable, and talking to people where they are and communicating the positions and issues, and to all people from all sorts of walks of life. So, and then that, I know that helped me moving forward in my career. And then that was in 2018, and then in 2019 I came back to, like 5 years after I finished my undergrad, came back to do my master's degree here at UTM in sustainability. So there may not be one straight path, like, and you will have setbacks, but just, yeah, be accountable to yourself. If you, as I said, if you fail, it's not a bad thing, right? You just have to maybe be compassionate with yourself, and be honest with yourself, and say, okay, why was I not successful at this? Not beat yourself up over it, and just kind of get up, dust your shoes off, and dust the dirt off your shoulder, as Jay-Z said. Yeah, that's what you got to do. So just one foot in front of the other.
Hello, so my question's for anyone, and I think as students we often get caught up in the day-to-day things we have to deal with, the quiz, the assignment, the essay, and I feel like sometimes that's it feels like far-fetched when we're going to be working in the real world and having these jobs. So I'm just wondering what the transition from being in school to now being in the workforce has been like, and do you still utilize any of the things you may have learned in some of these courses or takeaways you had in your day-to-day work right now?
So I can definitely answer that question. I think initially, like after coming out of school, I wanted to feel like I didn't want to think about school. I was so glad it was done, but I think a lot of it still comes back to me. So just my background is I did my biology and psychology degree here at UTM, and I worked in the peer health education program with health services. And that sparked my interest in public health and health promotion. And so I did my nursing degree a year after graduating from here, because I felt like with a professional degree, it could open doors, and it definitely did. That's how I found myself in public health, and that's how I'm here. But I think back to a lot of the conversations we had in health psychology, for example, when I'm talking to clients and I'm counseling clients on their conditions and managing their conditions. And so a lot of it almost feels like background information that my brain just kind of sweeps up as I go along. I think one of the things that I also really picked up from being in university was being able to multitask and prioritize and manage time well. Hayes and I were talking earlier about how, you know, you had a lot of extracurricular activities and you were involved in a ton of different things. And I feel like those things helped to break up the day, you know, so it wasn't just about school. You could be, you know, playing sports and planning an event. And so when I came out into the work world, it wasn't all work for me. I had work, I had volunteering, I was involved with my professional association. And so that really broadened my horizons in terms of the exposure that I got and the network that I got to build. So that's what I would say. I hope that answered the question.
So I think one thing I'd like to add is that the ability to have stamina. So as much as there are these essays and these applications and these, a lot of the work that you are doing now, whether it's in graduate level, undergrad, that you will never ever have to do again. So it might feel a bit unnecessary, a bit taxing, a bit just pointless on occasion, but at this level, the evaluation is a grade. As you continue to work in the experience, the evaluation at that point is someone's well-being. So it's really being able to take away, in my experience, I felt like a lot of the grit, the grinding work was actually preparation for projects that are going to take a lot longer than I expected. A client who takes a little bit longer to get on the page that I would like them to be on or the page that they sound like they're on. So again, so I feel like the higher level answer to that question is that stamina for sure is one thing that you are creating in this routine of tasks that may not ever happen in the workplace. And then the ability to think critically is specific to university. I find that there is less and less of that happening automatically. So in a school setting, and this is my experience, we're continually being asked to think critically. Here's some information, here's an application. Where are the connections as people get into a particular job, as a particular set of routines? Thinking critically isn't always the first option. Some people are not thinking critically at all. They're taking in information. So again, this ability to view some of the nittier, grittier work as stamina for some of the skills that you don't even know you're going to need, but you will need, that helped me make sense of the longer assignments that I knew nobody would ever ask me to write, and the multiple choice questions that I knew would never happen outside of this space. The stamina and the ability to think critically have lasted and been fundamental.
This question is about what Nigel said about like your setbacks, working warehouse jobs, like trying to really, you know, just really continuing to put yourself out there. This is for anybody who wants to answer. I guess, how do you find that resilience within yourself in order to like keep pushing towards a goal that you may want to like achieve? Like in terms of like going back to school for your master's after like 9 years or something like that. Like, where do you find that in yourself to like keep on trying to be better? Like, what type of mentality do you have in order to, you know, push yourself every day to achieve what you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think it's just thinking about my future self, and we're all getting older. 5 years from now, we'll all be 5 years older, right? And you want to be able to, when you get there, you want to be able to look back and kind of be proud of, okay, well, I took these steps to better my life, and here I am now. Like, if I just put, one foot in front of the other today, tomorrow, I might miss a day here or there, but like, eventually, it's like, working out or going to the gym or something like that, where it's like, you're not going to get stronger right away, but like, you give it a couple months, you look back, you see your progress, and like, oh wow, like, okay, like I can actually do this, and I can actually like, increase my skills, increase my competencies. So yeah, and I think a lot of that too is, it also is self-care too. Like when you do kind of like experience a setback, you experience a rejection, don't take it personally. It's not a reflection of you as a person. It's just, oh, okay, maybe like maybe there's things that I need to improve on, and how can you go about improving on those, and you just make a plan and stick to the plan, and yeah, fall down 7 times, get up 8. So.
I'll be honest with you, I think about this a lot because as I make this transition in life, I have a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear around, is this a good change for me? And I think one of the things that Hayes and I were talking about earlier is the fear doesn't really go away. I wish it did, but it doesn't. And so sometimes you just have to do it scared and tell people that you're scared, or tell people what you're feeling. I think the one thing that I'm really grateful for is my community, or the people that I hold dear, because I can tell them things and then they'll give me a word of encouragement, or they'll provide some criticism that I need, or a leg up, or a connection that's helpful. But the most important thing I found for myself is to have grace for myself, and to understand that I know I'm doing my best, and today may look great and tomorrow may not look great. And that's okay, because en masse, it's going to be an upward trend, just like Nigel was saying, just one foot in front of the other.
And I think one thing I don't think I know, one thing I would offer as well is this idea that often there are lots of places to apply. So because this one application to this one school wasn't accepted, it doesn't mean that every single school for the rest of time is going to say no to you. Sometimes it's a subjective decision. Sometimes it was literally 1 degree of separation between you and the person who got it. So there's an awareness where it's not only not taking it personally, but it's also making it as objective as possible, which is kind of the same, but you know what? I may not even understand why this is a no, and it may actually not be about me. It may be about circumstances beyond my control. It may be that I play hockey, but they were looking for a golfer. There's just so much that we don't understand, but the takeaway for me in rejection, in situations of rejection, is this isn't the only place I could be looking for this opportunity. So are there other schools where I can apply? Are there other clients? I get people sometimes who have the sense, well, this isn't the right time for this conversation. That doesn't take away from the skills that I bring. That doesn't take away from where that person is. It just means this may not be the right space and or time. So rejection is sometimes, we've heard redirection, but it's also a reminder, this isn't the only opportunity. So again, be accountable to the work you are willing to do and try again. In my experience, that's how I operate.
In respect of time, we're going to have one more question from the audience.
This is for any of you. So I think that I've noticed that there's a somewhat pervasive notion that STEM and creativity are mutually exclusive. So I'm just wondering what is your perspective on that? Because I think it's important to have both, and especially in terms of science communication and representation. There's a mold, and you don't always feel like you fit that mold, and it's okay, I want to bring my creativity to STEM, but it's is there a space for that? So yeah, I'm just wondering, what's your perspective on that? Can you do both? Do you do both?
That's something I found myself reflecting on quite a bit, and I definitely don't think they're mutually exclusive. I actually think they're deeply intertwined, and the reason why I say this is what I think of science, and I'm thinking specifically about research, and a lot of the work that I do is policy research. Creativity is really just thinking differently about problems, finding alternative approaches, and as part of that process, you're testing things out, you're trying new things. And when I think of research, it's sort of the same thing. It's really an approach. And so when I think of creativity, and when you think of the scientific method or approach, they're both ultimately trying to do the same thing. You have questions about the world, you're trying to figure out answers, and there's always going to be multiple answers. And so when you try to remove one from the other, I think you almost remove the essence or the whole purpose and goal. With a lot of the work that I do, it's a lot of social policy research. And so when we're thinking about people and human beings, we're very complicated. And when we think about setting up systems or designing approaches to how we deal with social, economic issues, you are going to be completely off base if you think about it from very linear perspective. And so that's where I think of our team specifically. We're a very diverse group of researchers with different backgrounds. And one thing that everyone shares in common is like the first thing that's on any job application, any type of work that we're doing, is thinking about creative solutions. But before you can get to solutions, you have to think creatively about what the problem is, right? And so that, to me, also maybe taking a step back on what we define creativity as. So perhaps if you're thinking about it from more of a visual arts perspective versus being in a lab, then maybe I still think that the two are very important. I think Nigel spoke quite a bit about communications, and one of the biggest things that we do is we do the research, then you have to figure out a way to get that information to the public, but also to policymakers to start to think about things. Like, you're really trying to direct people to think about issues in a certain way. And so there's the research component, the data crunching, all that, but then there's the actual, like, how do we make this accessible? How do we present the story, create a narrative? We build websites, decks, we do a number of foresights workshops, a whole bunch of different things that may not look like it's not usually actually a research paper. And so you have all these skills coming into one, and the whole goal from beginning to end is how do we look and understand the world, and how do we try to communicate that so other people can join us on that journey. But when I think of art and creativity, that's really what we're trying to do, create our understanding of the world and have other people join us in that journey of understanding it. So I think from my perspective, they're very deeply intertwined. You can't do one without the other. And I appreciate that question, because that's something I know for me, I always think about.
Thank you. I feel your passion. And I'm going to talk to you later, because you made some very good points that I can take back and talk to students about. Sorry. We are about to conclude this evening, but I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our panelists, both panels. You shared from an honest place, I think. The information was realistic, and it was personal. And I'm hoping that students listened, and they will take away what resonates with them. And if you forget anything, come to the Career Center and I will help you to remember. We are in the Davis building, and it's down the hall from Tim Hortons in the Career Hub. It is important for us to have your thoughts on how we did in order to make any necessary adjustments for future events. So before we conclude, kindly take a moment to complete the feedback form that you were given, or scan the QR code and let us know how we did. Feedback is important, and we don't take anything personally. What we do is we will read the feedback, and we try to implement changes as necessary. So as we close this evening, I would like to thank our sponsors, Manulife and TD Insurance, again, for making this event possible. A special thanks to our partners in planning and organizing this event. Black at UTM, Black Alumni Association Office of Advancement, UTMSU Career Center, Center for Student Engagement, and the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office. A very special thank you again to our panelists. You were gracious. It's cold, and I'm not sure how far you're coming from, but you graciously took the time to share perspectives, information, and maybe a contact or two before you leave with students. And I learned a lot. I did learn a lot. On behalf of the Career Center, I just want to say that for those of you who are graduating or wanting to apply to grad school, we do help you with putting your CV together, and we assist with critiquing your personal statements. Spots are running out, so you may want to think about making that career, that appointment. If you're looking for work next semester, at the end of next semester, there's a job fair coming up on January 15th in the Rock, and we have career strategist that will help you to put a resume together and get ready for prepare you for interviews. I think that's it. Check out the website. And thank you very much for coming. I appreciate students' involvement. This is the first time I've seen so many students, so many Black students in one place. So it's good. Hope to see you again.